All right. So, when it comes to the skill position, I mean, really, I'm gonna start. I'll just start broadly, Pete, with like kind of local recruiting because I wanted to emphasize this because there's a lot. We get a lot of questions on local recruiting and the elite guys, and I think there's been a sense out of Miami, not a sense, it's reality, but certainly recognition that with all the advancements, recruiting the trenches, doing all these sort of things, the elite players such as the Jeremiah Smiths, Brandon Innes, I know he hasn't turned out to be elite, but a player you wanted and is going to play for Ohio State, leaving. Those are not things that you want to make into a trend, right? With these top local skill position players leaving the state, and Miami really, really wants to reverse that trend and put it to bed. Obviously, Calvin Russell visiting this weekend at wide receiver from Northwestern. I'm told extremely high priority. No surprise there, but he is not dependent on anybody else. You could add, Randy Moss to this class. You're taking Calvin Russell no matter what. And you're pursuing him hard no matter what. Because it's one thing take and it's one thing to prioritize and pursue hard in 2025. So Calvin Russell is a major, major priority visiting this weekend. Not a surprise, but I mean, again, that was emphasized, underlined, an exclamation pointed to me. The one name, Pete, that we've talked about a bunch, I know you love, that and he's visiting next weekend, not this weekend, but he's continues to be a extremely high priority, Jason Lopez. We get a lot of questions. We talked about him yesterday, and I heard his name unprompted in discussions yesterday as listen, we think we're going to get a great chance at Vance Spafford, the extremely speedy slot receiver from California, reminds me of Tank Dell. But that doesn't mean anything about Jason Lopez. Jason Lopez is a very, very, very high priority no matter what, and they want him bad. So that was emphasized to me yesterday. He's visiting next weekend, not this weekend, but that was something that caught my ear. And then Derrek Cooper, the other kind of elite skill position guy here in South Florida. I continue to like the Canes there. I know that was exactly your question, Pete, but I wanted to get to that because that was my biggest takeaway from my discussions was, Miami does not want to see South Florida addresses or hometowns under players making plays for playoff teams. And Calvin Russell, Jason Lopez, Derrek Cooper, there's a tremendous passion and urge to get those guys under get them here.
Yeah, when you talk about, I mean, we've heard this discussion with Keys and Russell, right? And I think there's been some sentiment like if you get Keys, you don't need Russell. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. And I think our guess has been, man, if you get one of Keys or Russell, if one of them commits first, the other schools that are recruiting them are going to really probably play up the fact that, look, you're going to be our guy in this class at receiver sort of thing. So that's where I think it makes it tough to land both. But obviously what you're saying is Miami wants both and is not going to be affected by, you land one of them first, potentially. It's not going to make you say, well, we already have this one guy in the class. We can kind of scale it back on the other.
Yeah, exactly right, Pete. And we speculated, me and you, like, hey, it's just hard to get two of those kind of guys. So like, I'm not personally like saying, hey, I think we'll get both because
you did this at offensive tackle a couple years ago with Francis and with Sampson.
Right.
And listen, we're not going to play. Don't look at the result necessarily. Look at what it was when both of these guys were coming in here. They were highly, highly sought after in terms of financials, in terms of the programs that were after them at a premier position like offensive tackle. So obviously it's a bit different in this case, but I think that's the closest comparison you could have in terms of landing two elite guys at the same spot in the same class.
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference between like kind of what we project and what we anticipate or just being around the game and trying to, bet on it, I guess, from our seat versus what the goal is inside the building. And it was very much emphasized to me that, hey, Russell, Keys, Lopez, we want these guys bad, and it's separate from anything else that's going on. So that really caught my attention.